theater has been a part of both of your experiences.
A lot of drama in my family.
A lot of drama.
Yes.
But Holden, it's one thing that back in the 60s when there wasn't a lot of other stuff, there was no heat. So having drama, religious drama players. I saw Uncle Vanya about 8 times. I saw the cocktail party. They used to have this drama group come out from Augsburg College, and they would build their sets here and really be sort of like New Haven or,
Sure.
people going to Broadway. But they would put on the productions and then head off to Seattle to the Opera House, where Lutherans in Seattle would feel like they had to go see these plays. There were a number of them that were very funny. They did do Ibsen's Brand, which was pretty long, I remember, but I was only 15, so what do I know?
What do any of us know?
No, nothing.
Nothing.
Anyway, ask on.
Ask on. Well, for all you listeners out there, if you haven't recognized the vocal frequency of our 2 guests, we have Paul and Carol Hinderlie. You've been to the Village before, right?
Oh, alas.
Compared to Paul, I'm a newcomer. I came in 1970 as a 20-year-old volunteer and came back the next year, and it took us about 4 years before we
got together. Yeah, we did get married here in 1974, August 17. And
where in the Village?
In front of the jacuzzi.
Right.
In front of the jacuzzi.
Right, on the green in front of the
green.
jacuzzi.
And it was even longer because some of the patio hadn't been built yet.
A lot of that, right?
So we had a wedding with about 550 or 600 people because it was during the time that the incoming and the outgoing buses overlapped.
Yeah.
So some people came in, got in on a wedding. Some people went out after a wedding, and
I made 1,800 croissants, but I had lots of help because staff from the years before I was just leaving as cook. That's all they called. There weren't food service coordinators. There was the cook and the assistant associate cooks, and then we honeymooned up at Holden Lake, and the Forest Service closed the path behind us so that we'd have privacy. Not that it made too much difference.
it's pretty amazing.
It's nice when you have the inn with the Forest Service.
You wouldn't be able to do that now.
No, they couldn't.
Too many people all over those hills.
Yeah.
Then we returned again 2 years later, and after that, we were here for 2 years, and after that, Carol was at the University of Washington getting her master's degree, and I was cooking in Seattle, and then we moved to the upper Midwest. In the end, we bought a little bar we went out with Not So Good Courage.
That's the other song that we don't sing.
Yeah, we don't sing that, baby step courage. Well, there were some people who went out with amazing good courage. The administrator of the office, Marlene Johnson, who had never been out of northern Minnesota or Seattle Lutheran Bible Institute, she went to Liberia as secretary to the bishop. It was a time of 250,000 people were killed in Liberia during those years with Sergeant Doe, and then, I don't know, after he was executed, Sergeant, I can't remember the other one's name. She went out with good courage there, and she opened a safe place, especially for women. Mm-hmm. And all these women started to come to be part of St. Peter's, and she was the host. And it's amazing.
Well, it is amazing how many people have gone out with good courage, so to speak. I mean, another one that comes to mind you talked about yesterday was Meredith Olson. Who came up here and Paul's session yesterday talked about some of the failures at Holden that became something else. And Meredith's fish pond that she started outside the sauna, the river sauna, was probably a pretty significant failure. It just
I think all the fish died.
However, she went on to take her skills and her passion to Tanzania and start fish culture, and I don't remember how many thousands.
There are thousands and thousands of these eco-friendly fish farms in villages and towns in Tanzania. Plus her son has been the #1 rapper in East Africa. So you never know what's going to happen when you go down the mountain.
That's right. Well, I mean, there's just so much inspiration at Holden that just bursts these new transitional pathways for people.
We definitely thrived off of Holden Village energy, even on the other side of the continent. And during that time, Carol started taking Feldenkrais classes, which
wonderful.
I had barely heard of it, except a little bit from a person who came up here who was a Feldenkrais practitioner, who worked on some people who had huge back troubles, and out they walked down the mountain.
You're healed.
Carol, yeah, I know. Better than laying on hands. That doesn't always work. Worked for Jesus, seemed to work for Paul, but for us, not so much.
Yeah. What's it like, having so much rich history and so many experiences at Holden? Yeah, what are your thoughts on how the village is now?
I love to see the changes and all of the way along. I mean, Paul was connected with the village pretty much from the beginning of its life as Holden Village.
The first year of programming, yeah.
But one thing we know for sure is that change is going to happen, and we might as well embrace it. Not every change. I mean, Holden has had lots of ups and downs.
Absolutely.
And there are ingredients to health that probably need to be acknowledged as Holden continues. But it's wonderful. And last night seeing Copperstock.
Copperstock 23.
That was fabulous. And I just thought, wow, all these great young musicians who are writing songs and having a great time. That's what I loved about Holden when I first came. Because I play the guitar, and just sitting out there and playing songs and learning songs and performing songs and all kinds of things, as well as just the freedom of being in the mountains and etc. And being in a community that really affirmed newness and forgiveness and the ability to make mistakes and not die from them or kill someone else. So I love seeing Holden now.
Our children worked at Holden Village while we were directors, on and off. Julia was the barista and the head bus driver, and both of them had been housekeepers, and both of them worked in the kitchen. Catherine was a head cook in the kitchen in 2006, and I think we only had 5 having that. Plus performance. They both got to perform.
Wonderful.
And it wasn't, when I talk about the drama in the early years or the movies that we used to have. I mean, I was the projectionist when I was in high school, and I got to see La Strada about 6-8 times. I got to see all these Bergman films, and we had so many, everything from, Black Orpheus to Ikuru, Jane Fonda workout during the morning, and that was about
Jane Fonda workout. We got to bring that back.
Well, during the winter, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Been fun to watch. Some things are the same. When I talked about things that changed the first year, before we got a bell that would ring things, the siren woke everyone up in the morning, and the siren was there for. Somebody said, well, how did you know if it wasn't a fire? Well, if it was a fire drill or a fire, it would warble. But otherwise it would just went, and there were people who loved that siren, and were upset because there was going to be a bell. Yeah, I know. When Carol and I first moved out, they had just put in all the new sensors, and the first year in 77 and 78, the siren would go off so often, searchers check, that sort of thing.
Searchers check, Charlie 2.
Charlie 2, searchers check.
And we moved to Seattle, and we were about a block we lived on 3rd Avenue, and 4th Avenue had a fire department. The siren there would go off at 3 or 4 in the morning, and we would pop out of bed and start getting dressed, no matter what, because it was wired in our heads that it's unsafe to be here. we got to run to Hose House 4 or whatever.
Searchers check.
Searchers check.
Searchers check, Charlie 2.
That's right.
And our daughter Rhoda, Catherine,
and Martha Schwain.
Martha Schwain wrote a song called "Searchers Check"
that
we're trying to recover.
Disco kind of.
It was a disco track.
It was hilarious.
We should definitely find that.
Half disco, half rap, but it was very fun. It'll.
And we have to find it because it really is good. It's really cool.
Charlie 2, searchers check.
One of the things Holden does is it's one of the few places that has transgenerational friendships still.
Yeah.
And one of our friends up here, Maren, was saying their daughter, who was here from when she was 11 to when she was 14, she's down visiting one of her best friends who happens to be 75. And that doesn't happen anywhere. So when you were talking about bowling, I thought about bowling alone. Folks aren't together on the outside the way they used to be. And there's whether you're talking about Kiwanis or churches, you don't have that. What de Tocqueville loved about the United States was that we joined associations. All sorts of odd associations. This is, 1830s and 40s. But he thought maybe that was the key to what kept factions from overflowing. If you go to church with only people you agree with, the Episcopalians used to be, the Republican Party at prayer. That's what it was called. What if everybody actually had to glom together in different ways? And Holden's a place where all sorts of people, all sorts of ideas come. As long as they're not. Holden doesn't have to be afraid of folks coming up. I use the example of this older pastor from northern Minnesota who came up in the middle of winter. And we used to give pastors pretty much a free ride. And if during the off season, his pastors came up for a very minimal, and seminarians could come up.
Oh, in the middle of winter, it's wonderful to have people come in and bring new energy and new faces. And
Anyway, he came up, and we found out after he left about a month later, his bishop wrote and said, "What did you do?" He's the thorn in my side because he hates gay pastors so much. And we had a partnered gay pastor who couldn't be ordained because it wasn't okay yet. But this guy comes up, but whether he was ready for bear or not, it was Sunday, and he came to Sunday worship, and he heard Eric preach. And it just, oh, what do you know? Peter in the house of Cornelius or something,
Sure.
He was different when he left, as many of us, or most of us are. I remember the first time I left when I was a 20-year-old after 2 wild months of volunteer staff.
It was 1970, so
it was wild.
The student strike and Cambodia and Jackson State.
Very political, and also it was just this huge liberation for me personally because I'm a preacher's kid. I went to a Lutheran college, and now there's nothing particularly safe about a Lutheran college, but coming to Holden was just it was just a complete, my brain cells were moving all over the place. And I remember going out the village and looking up and thinking, I wonder if I'll ever see these trees again.
Well, you did go to USC after that, so it was a while before you would come back.
What makes both of you laugh?
A lot of things.
Carol makes me laugh. That's good.
I have to say, this morning in my Feldenkrais class, someone came up to me afterwards and said, I'm not going to tell you who it was, so I feel free in quoting. I was doing this lesson and suddenly you were inside my head and it was hilarious. And I almost started to laugh, but I didn't want to disturb anyone else. And I just thought, that is wonderful.
You got inside.
Yeah, you became one of the many voices.
Yeah. Whoa. Well,
great.
Just to be, one of the, the holy hilarity of Holden Village is things happen spontaneously here that take an awful lot of planning on the outside.
That's right,
here,
too much planning.
Here, part of it is you're free to fail. All sorts of people are willing to just stand up and look stupid. And that's great. Does that make me laugh? Am I laughing at them? Yeah, sort of. But it's the riskiness. Holden is one of the few places in the world where you're free to be foolish.
Right. Laughing at oneself is very hard. But children do it all the time. You see kids of a certain age, sometimes they're embarrassed, but at other ages, they make this happy laughter happen and it delights them, and in many ways we're able to kind of recapture some of those childish moments for ourselves and have a lot of the adultness taken away. For a while.
Yeah, Leo Busted wrote a poem, I can't remember it, except the first line was about Holden. It was a Holden Village poem, but it was load lifter. You took these burdens. And part of it is the persona, the mask we all put on the outside so that we don't look quite so foolish.
And how many people have had their first public performance up here?
Yeah.
You'd have, talking about what you're interested in there. I mean, that's just a wonderful thing.
Even podcasting brings up a lot of fear for people.
Sure.
And so a lot of people's first experiences of having something recorded of them, not only that, but being broadcast, to the outside world, that warms my heart specifically in helping people overcome sort of that timidity. I also convinced myself I was timid at one point until I realized, no, that's just not true. That was a silly story I told myself. And so I love helping other people kind of overcome.
And it's a wonderful gift.
Yeah, that's a great gift.
So
because we do
thank
tell
you on behalf of all of us.
On behalf of
On behalf of
Village, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Thank you. No, but it's the same with food. Holden's a place where I have relatives who, I can't eat hot food, I can't eat this, I can't eat that.
Sure.
And some people can't. We have some family members who can't eat legumes, which is really difficult at Holden.
Yeah.
But you get to try, I'll just try it. And I see parents, telling their kids, well, try this. And this one little boy today got such a kick out of the lentil mushroom stew, which they called cream of Arizona stew.
Today,
Stew
right?
Nice.
Yeah,
without
yeah.
cream.
Right.
Which is part of the joke. No dairy. But and this little boy said, "Oh, but then he came back. This is great."
Is that, can I have some more?
Yeah, I thought it was the right time for that little boy
Absolutely.
to try.
That boy will remember that
Arizona.
moment.
Yeah,
Like, that'll be like
Right.
the paving stones for.
There's so many things. I don't know. I'm so happy to be here now because it just completely refreshes my love for this place and all the people I meet here. I used to be amazed as a young person just how many of my deepest conversations and friendships came from Holden Village. And of course, I married somebody who came out of that same
not especially
situation.
deep there.
Maybe not deep.
She
but-
found me in the shallows.
Right, but also I used to say that I had my highest highs and my lowest lows here.
Sure.
And I talked with someone last night who came here about the same age as I did, and I don't know if it's helpful to have that affirmed, but just the fact that whatever low is happening has its counterbalance. There's such a range of experiences and emotions and ideas that are available here that in a safe place, essentially.
Yeah.
Not that everything's safe. I mean, our kids are climbing some place today that I don't know is safe, but they'll be okay.
They'll be fine. Yes.
Well, I think that's true. I think Holden does give us space. So many people come here at times of transition. People coming out of college, coming out of marriages, coming out of relationships after death and so many other things. You have to have time in the tomb. You don't go all the right from, you don't go right to resurrection. You have to have time in the tomb.
I know.
And
We're always trying to bypass.
And we're trying to get through that. And Holden actually gives the space and the time for reflection to grieve, first of all, but also to be part of the rhythm of every day. The work and the study and the worship and the humor. Last night, the energy that went into putting on the copper stock. But also the talent. I mean, people discovering things.
Yeah.
And often, it's like your timidity, you have to discover. Part of me is timid, but there's, huge amount that gets, I used to think I was an introvert, but that's just because the rest of my family are such extroverts.
Yeah, Paul's the quiet one.
I'm the quiet one in my family. Well, they were the only Italian family to come out of Norway. That's what somebody told my sister. Anyway.
One final question.
Yep.
Eden is calling. What does that mean to both of you? And both of you are also offering things this week in the village. How would you like to talk about that, and perhaps how the theme of this summer, Eden is Calling, how is that manifested in your experiences this week?
I love the fellow faculty members. I love, for the first time actually, being in that position and seeing how the cross-pollination happens between sessions. So I think I have to still say I'm not sure.
Perfect.
I mean, there are some images for me that are missing in that. The call is wonderful. I've just never thought of Eden as being something that's calling forward. And so maybe that's limited. That's a limitation in my imagination, and maybe something will come.
It can be kind of a siren call, not a siren as in false
check.
call. No, not searcher's check.
Searcher's check.
You know, heaven on earth, that somehow we can get workers' paradise. I think what I've felt is that it's a sense of call that is communal and individual and universal, creation-wide. It's all those things, but it's also in time, these moments, and I think that's where I feel at Holden. There are these Eden moments. I had one last night at Vespers at Sacred
So did I.
Space. I mean, and people came up and they said, you know, I was outside, out of the body experience. I was thinking, well, go back. No, there's an idea of the mountaintop experience and with Jesus and the disciples, and Peter says, let's build a temple here. We can stay here.
Yeah.
And people can come up and we'll be gurus, and you can climb the mountain and ask me questions, and so life isn't a river. I don't know. Anyway, but they do come, and sometimes, and that happened to me several times this week at Holden. I thought, yeah, Eden is calling. Yeah.
Well, I was interviewing Sam and Elise.
Yeah.
They both had very great responses to it in regards to we have these giant issues or God-sized problems, as some people would call it, and that really overwhelms people and even messes with their ability to even conceive of what it would take for them to contribute. But Sam was just you know what? I plant a garden and that's what I do. That brings me meaning and purpose, and I love the simplicity of that too, which I feel like Holden embodies as well. There's big things we can do, but there's also these really the small things are just as equally important.
Plant our garden at the end of Candide's journey, Voltaire's Candide, we're just going to have to plant our garden.
Yeah.
The big ideas. And I was talking about Paul Hayne, the economist in 1970, and here, everybody was just on edge. We are going to change the world. The boomers are doing, anyway, he just said, there's only one thing you people are going to do. Before you die, yes, what are we going to do? Marijuana will be legalized, that's about it. And people were so angry at him. What do you mean?
We're going to change the world.
We're going to change the world. Oh, marijuana.
I just have to add about Sam. You might have talked about this when you had your conversation, but he makes soil.
Right.
He makes the most wonderful soil.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that is beyond compost. It's created with love and with so much potential. I think that so much of what we do moves toward making that fertile, rich soil for ourselves and for the people coming beyond us. I love
Excellent.
Thank you.
How did that search song go again?
It just kind of goes, searchers, check. And then they got all this garage stuff.
Can we just do a searcher's check? Just all three of us just...
Yeah, we have to get into it. It's
So
74.
you got to do the...
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom.
Searchers, check.
Searchers check. Searchers check.
Searchers check. Chalet 2.
Chalet 2. Searchers check.
Well,
Excellent.
It was,
they were.